There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that her worth isn't determined by who chooses her, but by who she chooses to become. For too long, we've been told that love, validation, and belonging are things we earn from someone else, that we are somehow incomplete until another person fills in the missing pieces. But here's the truth. There are no missing pieces. You are already enough. You are already enough. Choosing yourself is not about being selfish. It's not about shutting people out or closing the door on love. It's about understanding that your happiness, your peace, and your purpose are not negotiable. It's about refusing to shrink yourself to fit into a space that was never built for your greatness. When a woman chooses herself over a man, over anyone who would compromise her spirit, she's not walking away from love. She's walking toward the truest love she will ever know, the one she has with herself. And when that happens, everything changes. Today, we're going to talk about what that choice means, the courage it takes, the fears you'll face, the freedom you'll feel, and why, in the end, choosing yourself is the single most powerful decision you will ever make. Because once you know your worth, you'll never give anyone the power to tell you otherwise. Somewhere along the way, too many women were taught that choosing themselves meant they were being selfish. They were told that sacrifice is proof of love, that compromise always means giving more than you receive, that putting someone else's needs above your own is the noble thing to do. And yes, relationships require compromise, they require sacrifice, but they should never require you to sacrifice yourself. There's a difference between loving someone and losing yourself in the process. Choosing yourself is not about turning your back on love. It's about aligning with dignity. It's about understanding that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. When you value yourself, you're showing others exactly how to value you. When you respect your boundaries, you're teaching others how to respect them too. And when you honor your needs, you're proving, most of all to yourself, that you are worthy of being cared for, not just by someone else, but by you. Too often, women stay in situations where they're slowly eroding their own sense of self. They silence their voice to avoid conflict. To avoid conflict. They minimize their dreams so they won't overshadow someone else's. They accept behavior they know is beneath them because they're afraid of being alone. And little by little, their identity becomes wrapped up entirely in who they are to him instead of who they are to themselves. But the truth is, love that requires you to shrink is not love. It's control dressed up in affection. When a woman chooses herself, it's not an act of selfishness. It's an act of clarity. It's seeing the truth of the situation and deciding that her worth is not up for negotiation. When a woman chooses, it's deciding that she will no longer trade her peace of mind for companionship, that she will no longer settle for crumbs when she deserves the whole table. And that choice isn't about rejecting a man, it's about refusing to reject herself. The hardest part is that choosing yourself can make you feel like you're letting someone else down. You worry they'll see you as cold or ungrateful. But here's the thing, choosing yourself is not an attack on anyone else. It's simply saying, I will not abandon myself for your comfort. And while that may upset someone in the short term, in the long run, it is the healthiest choice you can make, because any relationship that requires you to betray yourself is already broken. This isn't about building walls around your heart. It's about setting gates. Gates can open. They can close. They protect what's inside while still allowing connection. Choosing yourself is about deciding who gets access and under what conditions. It's about refusing to hand over the keys to your emotional well-being to someone who hasn't proven they'll handle it with care. Don't. There's also a quiet power that comes when a woman decides to value herself first. She stops over-explaining her choices. She stops apologizing for her needs. She no longer feels the need to beg for the bare minimum. And when that shift happens, everything changes. The kind of relationships she entertains change. The way she carries herself changes. Even the way she speaks changes. Her words carry the weight of someone who knows she is enough. The beauty is, this choice doesn't just impact one relationship, it impacts every relationship. When you choose yourself, you naturally filter out people who don't truly see you. The ones who only valued you when you were bending to fit their needs will fade away, away. But the ones who value you for who you truly are will step closer because you're no longer hiding behind a watered down version of yourself. And there's something else. When a woman chooses herself, she gives permission for others to do the same. She becomes a living example that you don't have to stay where you're not valued. She shows that self respect isn't arrogance, that boundaries aren't barriers to love, but bridges to healthier connections. She proves that you can love deeply without abandoning yourself in the process. At its core, this is about one simple truth. You teach the world how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. If you show up for yourself, others will learn to show up for you. If you speak to yourself with kindness, others will follow that tone. If you respect your own time, your own body, your own dreams, others will learn to respect them too. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it is self respect. And the moment you realize that, everything about the way you live, love, and lead begins to change. We've all heard the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. But most of us don't realize how true it really is until we've been running on empty for far too long. When a woman spends all her energy trying to keep someone else happy. When she's constantly tending to someone else's needs while ignoring her own, she eventually hits a point where there's nothing left to give. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, so gradual that she may not even notice how drained she's become until one day she wakes up feeling like a stranger in her own life. The problem is, society often celebrates women for this kind of self neglect. We call it loyalty, we call it devotion. We praise women who would give everything to their relationships as if that's the highest form of love. But here's the truth. Love that costs you your health, your joy, and your identity is not love. It's depletion disguised as commitment. When you prioritize your own well-being, you're not being selfish. You're making sure you can actually show up fully for the people and things that matter. Because let's be honest, when you're exhausted, resentful, or running on fumes, you're not showing up as your best self. You might still be there physically, but mentally and emotionally, you're somewhere else. You're surviving instead of thriving. Choosing yourself first means you fill your own cup before trying to pour into anyone else's. It means making time to rest without guilt, to pursue your own passions without apology, to tend to your own emotional needs without waiting for permission. And here's the irony. When you take care of yourself, you actually have more to give. Your energy is cleaner, your presence is stronger, your love is deeper. You give from a place of abundance instead of desperation. Think about it like this. If a candle burns itself down just to give light to the room, eventually, the flame goes out. But if you tend to the flame, protect it, and keep it fueled, it can light the way for a long time. You are that flame, and you owe it to yourself, and to everyone who benefits from your light, to keep it burning strong. There's another piece to this. When you make yourself a priority, you set a standard for how others treat you. If you're constantly ignoring your own needs, the people around you will start to believe your needs aren't important. If you never speak up for yourself, they'll assume you're fine being unheard. But when you care for yourself unapologetically, you send a clear message. I matter. My well-being matters. My time matters. And the people who respect you will adjust accordingly. This shift also changes the way you approach relationships. Instead of clinging to someone out of fear of being alone, you start to recognize that you are already whole. You don't need someone to complete you. You choose someone who complements you. It's a very different kind of love. It's not born out of dependency, but out of choice. And when two whole, healthy people come together, the relationship doesn't drain them, it fuels them. The fear many women have is that prioritizing themselves will make them seem cold, distant, or unloving. But the opposite is true. When your own cup is full, you can give without resentment. You can love without losing yourself. You can support without it feeling like a sacrifice of your soul. People feel the difference when you give from a place of fullness instead of emptiness. It's calmer, steadier, more genuine. Of course, making this shift isn't easy. If you've spent years or even decades putting others first, it can feel uncomfortable, even wrong, to turn that attention inward. You might feel guilty the first time you say no. You might feel selfish the first time you cancel plans because you need rest. But over time, you'll realize that these aren't acts of selfishness. They're acts of sustainability. They're what allow you to keep showing up for the long haul. And here's the thing, this isn't just about you. When the people around you see you valuing your own well being, it gives them permission to do the same. You become an example for your children, your friends, your community. You prove that it's possible to be loving and giving without being self destructive. That's a legacy worth leaving. So, yes, take care of him if you want to. Love him if you choose to. But never let that love come at the cost of your own health, your own dreams, your own soul. Because at the end of the day, no one else is responsible for filling your cup. That's your job. That's your job. And when it's full, everything in your life, every relationship, every dream, every part of you gets better. Because you can't give your best if you've already given yourself away. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that her time, energy, and heart are not infinite resources. She starts to see that pouring endlessly into someone else while leaving herself empty is not an act of love. It's a slow erosion of her own identity. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It often comes after years of bending, compromising, and silencing her own voice in the hope that it will make the relationship stronger. But one day, she wakes up and asks herself a simple, profound question. What would my life look like if I gave myself the same love I've been giving away so freely? That question changes everything. Choosing herself is not about being selfish. It's about recognizing that self-sacrifice without boundaries isn't noble. It's unsustainable. Think about it. You can't pour from an empty cup. And yet, how many of us, whether we're in relationships, marriages, or even long-term situations, convince ourselves that putting ourselves last is what makes us good partners? The truth is, neglecting your own needs doesn't make you a better partner. It makes you a shadow of the person you were meant to be. When a woman decides to set boundaries, it's often met with resistance, sometimes from the very person who claimed to love her most. Why? Because boundaries feel like rejection to people who are benefiting from her lack of them. But she starts to see that saying a no isn't cruel. It's an act of self-respect. It's drawing a line that says, this is how I expect to be treated, and I will not accept less. Lies. The first time she enforces that boundary, it might feel terrifying. She's been conditioned to believe that her worth comes from her willingness to tolerate, to compromise, to be easygoing. But over time, she notices something. The more she honors her boundaries, the stronger she feels. The guilt begins to fade, replaced by quiet confidence. And that confidence isn't about arrogance, it's about alignment. Her actions are finally matching her values. And here's what's truly powerful. The moment she starts honoring her own needs, she begins to attract relationships, romantic, platonic, professional, that honor them too. She starts surrounding herself with people who don't see her strength as a threat, but as an inspiration. People who don't need her to shrink so they can feel tall. But this choice also comes with loss. She will lose people. Some will walk away because they can no longer control her. Others will drift because they preferred her when she was more convenient. And in those moments, she'll be tempted to go back to the old version of herself, the one who said yes, when she wanted to say a no, just to keep the peace. But she won't. Because once you've tasted the freedom of self-respect, you can't unknow it. Over time, she realizes that choosing herself doesn't mean closing her heart to love. It means raising the standard for what love looks like in her life. It means she will no longer accept love that asks her to betray herself. She's not looking for perfection, but she is looking for mutual respect, emotional safety, and a partnership where both people are free to grow. This transformation also forces her to redefine what strength looks like. It's not just about independence or doing everything alone. It's about interdependence. It's about being able to stand on her own 2 feet while also allowing herself to lean on those who've earned her trust. Strength is not isolation. It's the ability to choose who has access to you. Pun. And maybe most importantly, she starts to see that by choosing herself, she's giving other women permission to do the same. She becomes a quiet example, not by preaching, but by living. Her daughters, nieces, friends, and even strangers watching from a distance begin to see that it's possible to love deeply without losing yourself in the process. Choosing yourself over a man doesn't mean you can't have a man in your life. It means you refuse to have one at the cost of losing yourself. It means you no longer confuse love with self-abandonment. It means you're willing to face the discomfort of walking away rather than stay in a situation that keeps you small. And when she stands in that truth fully, unapologetically, something extraordinary happens. She stops negotiating her worth. She stops begging to be chosen because she's already chosen herself. And from that place, she doesn't settle for crumbs because she knows she's the whole feast. Because at the end of the day, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. And the moment you treat that relationship as sacred, everything in your life starts to change. You stop just surviving and you start living. And you realize that choosing yourself was never the end of love. It was the beginning of real love. If you want, I can now continue with key point 5 in the same tone so the speech flows seamlessly. Would you like me to proceed?